This video is brought to you by ZestMoney. Visit ZestMoney.in and avail instant loans to buy your favorite smartphone. It's an entirely digital process with high approval rates, seamless EMI payments, and even zero pre-closure charges. But the best part of all is the 0% interest on most merchants, and you don't even need a credit card or a credit score either. Honor and Huawei have been more or less making breakthroughs in terms of smartphone cameras ever since the P9. While they have found successful formulas, they're still open to experimentation, and that's what made their camera phones stand out. One such product of experimentation is the latest View 20, which packs some interesting camera hardware. This is Sandeep from RevAtlas, and you're watching the camera review of the View 20. Although the layout of the camera setup at the back might suggest that you're getting a triple camera setup, the View 20 in fact has a dual camera setup. The primary sensor is a half-inch 48MP Sony IMX586 sensor with f1.8 aperture and 0.8 micron pixel size. You also get a secondary time of flight sensor for depth information. While the 0.8 micron pixel size may seem way too small, it's important to note that by default the camera captures in 12 megapixels due to pixel binning. The View 20 uses a quad Bayer array that combines information from 4 different pixels into one single one, which essentially gives you an image with a resulting pixel size of 1.6. The Sony IMX586 was launched in July last year and has a compact design that measures 8mm diagonally, which allows for better performance than most other sensors that take a similar or larger footprint. It has a 2x2 arrangement where adjacent pixels have the same color information, and as a result it's meant to be used with pixel binning, which is why the 12MP setting is recommended. We shall try samples with both the 12MP and 48MP to show you the difference. The camera captures great looking images in daylight, 4D predictive focus is quick to lock on, and the shutter speed is fast too. Colors are rendered well and white balance is on point. The detailing and sharpness are perhaps the best bits, as there's plenty of information to work with, and you can even shoot and crop in later and still get a pretty usable image. The benefits of pixel binning is clearly evident here. We're happy to say that the AI mode this time around isn't as overpowering as the Honor 10 or P20 Pro. It's more like the Mate 20 Pro in that respect with its laid back approach. Yes, there is still some tweaking going on, particularly in terms of bumping up the saturation, but it's very subtle, and in most cases I think people would prefer the effect, especially since it automatically even helps to shoot HDR or improves dynamic range in certain scenarios without having to manually enable the HDR mode. 48MP images can be taken only in the default photo mode or the Pro mode, while RAW photos are available only in Pro mode. HDR night mode and most other specific modes can only capture at 12MP resolution maximum. Photos taken in 48MP resolution are noticeably softer looking and also noisier. You do effectively get 48MP of resolution, but you lose out on a lot of color information as well. The higher the megapixel count, the higher the noise, and also since there is no pixel binning happening, the smaller 0.8 micron pixel size results in less sharpness than the 12MP pixel binned images with 1.6 micron pixel size. So we definitely recommend taking images at 12MP because contrary to what you might think, more isn't always better, and that applies here. You only get larger file sizes with 48MP at the sake of more noise and lesser detailing. Low-light performance is pretty good using the 12MP mode where there's good exposure and good colors and spot-on white balancing. In low light too, the 48MP performs much worse when compared to 12MP images. There's much more noise in low-light shots on the 48MP samples than the 12MP ones. And unless the light is extremely low, you can use the regular mode to capture photos, but under extremely low light situations, it's better to use the night mode. It isn't as stable as a P20 Pro or Mate 20 Pro since there's no OIS, but it's still pretty usable and the benefits are very apparent. There's much better color accuracy, more well exposed images, and lower noise. The only downside is the possibility of slight blurring due to shakes. The View 20 is smart enough to recognize when the phone is handheld or on a stable surface and adjust the shutter speed accordingly. For example, this shot was taken handheld with a much lower shutter speed than this one, which was rested on a surface and took nearly 30 seconds to complete. It didn't take one single shot for 30 seconds, but rather takes several photos with different exposures and layers them together to create one good looking frame. Thanks to this, low light imaging is probably the best in its price range. But when you have plenty of moving subjects or objects, it's better to actually use the regular mode to avoid motion blurring unless you're looking for that sort of an effect. It's also worth noting the night mode can even help in certain daylight or well-lit scenarios to improve the dynamic range and overall image quality. As usual, you get a portrait mode and aperture mode for blurring effects, and they're largely similar. They both aim to simulate a shallower depth of field and isolate the subject object further than what the sensor can do with hardware alone. The aperture mode allows you to simulate the depth of field effect similar to what you would get from a camera with adjustable aperture. You can choose between f.95 or f16 or any value in between, and the depth of field gets shallower or deeper based on what you choose. The front camera is a 25MP f2 unit but lacks autofocus. This is something that has been missing even on the highest end Huawei's, and the View 20 is no different. Hopefully they introduce autofocus on their phones very soon, but as of now you need to hold it at the right distance or risk getting a softer image. When held right, there's plenty of detail and good sharpness. The dynamic range is a bit limited, and as a result the HDR mode does come in handy. I say that because many Honor phones and Huawei phones don't have HDR for the front camera. In terms of low light, performance is better than I expected, especially with the f2 aperture and high megapixel count. It's fairly detailed and noise is kept well in control as well. Portrait mode works well here too, and although it doesn't have as good an edge detection as the rear camera, it still does the job really well even when there's a lot of intricate or complex patterns in the background. Most other phones would have screwed up blurring in such instances, but the View 20 didn't. The Mate 20 Pro was the first smartphone that I saw take video seriously from the Honor and Huawei camp, and I'm happy to say that Honor has stressed that across onto the View 20 as well. You can record videos up to a maximum resolution of 4K at 30fps, and it also supports EIS. There's no toggle for stabilization, either the resolution supports it or not. 4K and 1080p support stabilization at 30fps, but 1080p at 60 and 1080p 19.2:9 aspect ratio at 30 doesn't support it. 4K videos are one to go for since it captures great amount of detail, which is even more than the 37mbps bitrate seems to suggest. The stabilization is really smooth and the colors are natural too, unlike some older phones which overdid the saturation. 1080p videos are for some reason very low in terms of bitrate, and it captures around 8mbps, but then again the quality seems to suggest that it's better than that. We happened to try out the video in low light too, but for some reason there's plenty of jittering and ghosting happening. It seems like it's due to the way that it is processing the stream, and hopefully something that an update will fix. The front facing camera maxes out at 1080p, but you have the option to turn HDR on or off even for video. We recommend turning HDR on as you do get better dynamic range mostly in the highlights, and the overall bitrate remains roughly the same. The sad part here is that there isn't EIS support. Hey guys, it's Sandeep from RevAtlas, and this is the front-facing camera on the View 20 capturing HDR video in full HD 30fps. Let me know what you guys think about the overall sharpness, the dynamic range, the stabilization, and even how well it's become my voice, and whether or not you see a difference between the HDR mode and the non-HDR mode. Also, it's a bit difficult or a bit different to get used to the front-facing camera that's there as a cutout in the display, as opposed to one that's hidden in the notch or somewhere else above the display. So you literally have to kind of change the way you shoot videos or position your eyes in order to make it seem more natural on video. We definitely hope that they enable it via a software update, since the phone is powerful enough to support it. You can capture slow motion videos up to 960fps in 720p, and that really slows down the subject or object. Here are some samples we got with the View 20. The camera allows you to either basically manually trigger the shot or else let the AI trigger the shot for you when it detects motion. There's an AI color mode which basically does selective coloring in a video. It's limited to 1080p and it works best with humans, but may also work with certain objects. It takes a fraction of a second to kick into action if a subject appears immediately, but after that their clothes are also taken into color. Sometimes if an object is too close or overlapping, that too gets color information, or if the background is too intricate, you may see some color bleeding too. But overall it's a pretty interesting effect that could yield great results if handled well. Honor phones have had good performance when it came to photography, but have had some limitations in low light and videography. We're happy to say that the View 20 takes great photos in well lit conditions and good photos in low light, and is possibly the best in the segment in that terms. As for video, it's great to see that the rear camera is now so much better, but the front camera really needs EIS. I personally think I would go for the View 20 over the OnePlus 60 if camera was a priority, but we'll be doing a comparison to ascertain who the real winner is pretty soon. So do stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure you visit ZestMoney.in and avail instant loans to purchase your dream products, be it a smartphone, electronics, furniture, and more across Flipkart, Amazon, and more than 100 other partners.